Hi, friends. I was excited to sit down and interview Danna Nelson, a young woman living in Minnesota with a rare cancer called rhabdomyosarcoma, an aggressive cancer which forms in the soft tissues. Danna was diagnosed while living in Finland at the age of 22. It was a pleasure listening and conversing with her, as she is the first individual we've interviewed for the Death with Dignity podcast who is in a similar position as myself. A young adult living with a terminal disease, simply looking to have a choice during their end-of-life experience. Danna takes the time to share her interests, motivations, and how cancer has both positively and negatively impacted her life. We thank Danna for displaying tremendous compassion and courage while taking the necessary risks to empower those individuals fighting for a choice. Enjoy the episode. Awesome. Well, we're here with Danna today, everyone, and
Hi.
fill us in. Yeah, tell us about yourself, Danna. We always like to start with giving our guests just the chance to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your age, where you're from, background, any family you want to share about, or hobbies, all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Danna. I'm 25. Oh, sorry. I just turned 26. This is not the first time that I've made that mistake on recording. I'm 26 and I live with my parents in Blaine, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis. And right now, I just had stable scans yesterday. So that's good news. But I don't know, whenever I have scans and I get either good or bad news, it always kind of throws me into a weird place. I'm kind of still processing it, figuring out how I feel and everything. But in general, that's like really good news. I can continue doing the chemo that I'm doing right now and making plans. And so I am really addicted to online shopping at the moment. I get government money and I am just like super addicted to online shopping. Like 2 years ago, Danna would have been so mad at me for how much I am investing in fast fashion right now, but it just makes me happy. So gotta do what you gotta do.
For sure. Yeah, whatever makes you happy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what else? Tell us more. I feel like sometimes, and maybe you could speak to this at some point too. I'm not sure how long you've been diagnosed or sick with cancer, but yeah, it's like there's way more to each person, right? And I never want to just focus on someone and just their disease, right? So
yeah,
anything else you'd love to share or you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Any other stuff that's really important to you.
Sure. I guess like when I was 19, this is a pretty important detail. When I was 19, I moved to Finland by myself.
Dang.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just like my dream to do that. I just had this weird obsession with Finland because I was a musician and like a classical trombonist. And my teacher here, who was in the Minnesota Orchestra, he's Finnish. And I was just like little Lizzie McGuire girl, like really romanticizing the idea of Europe as a whole and thinking that like Finland, of course, since it's in the same continent as like Venice, it probably has small canals and colorful buildings. And so I thought Finland must be really cool. So I went there, and the first morning I was ever in Finland, I actually threw up because I was so like, I don't know, just like in shock by how it wasn't how I expected and how I was finally there and everything. Finland is a lot like here, honestly. But I mean, as far as like their government and like their economy, it's a lot better. It's kind of a socialist type of thing. They would never say that, but schooling is free, even for foreigners at the time. Schooling was free. So I got to go to school. when I got sick, I got like pretty much free treatment, really cheap treatment, even though I was a foreigner. And I was never like a citizen. I was just a resident. So they treated me really, really well. And that was really, really cool. I totally took advantage of that. And I don't know, I loved Finland. I
That's so
loved
cool.
living
What
there.
were you doing over there? Did you work? Did you go to school? And how long were you living there for?
I went to school for like 3 years almost, I think. And then I got sick. So then I was like going through treatment. My first 2.5 years of treatment were in Finland. And then during like a little pause when I was like stable, my disease was stable, and I was able to work. I got a couple jobs. I worked in a fancy restaurant called Manos, and it was super stressful, so I quit. And then I worked in this amazing little bakery it was small, and I could work there just by myself. I could run the whole place by myself, and it was such an amazing experience. And then COVID hit, so then I lost my job because it just shut down. They shut down the bakery permanently, and that was really hard. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of my time in Finland. I stayed for some more months, but then I ran out of money, and simultaneously my cancer became super aggressively stage 4. And they were like, you should move home because we think, if you're not lucky, you might only have until Christmas. And it was September at the time. So my mom came to Finland and she packed me up, and I moved back to the States in November 2020. So it's been like a year and a half that I've been back here, and it's still weird because my whole young adulthood was in Finland, and so I was studying originally there.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. What
Yeah.
what do you have any brothers or sisters? Did I ask you that already?
Well, you asked about family a little bit, and I do. I have 3 half siblings, 2 from my mom and 1 from my dad, but they're a lot older than I am. So we didn't grow up. We never grew up like in the same household. My youngest sister is 17 years older than I am. So yeah,
So there's definitely that age gap.
yeah, there's an age gap. So I was honestly like closer with my nieces and nephews growing up. And
Sure.
my siblings and we have a good relationship, but it's just different age and different experience. My parents were in different places when they raised them.
Yeah, of course. My mom has an older sister who's, I believe, 12 years older. So I feel like it's kind of similar in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, just different times of life.
Yeah.
So tell us about, and you can always do anything that you want to share, like go back to any personal stuff that you want to share about, like whatever is great. But since we kind of got to that point, I guess, tell us about when you were in Finland and when you were initially diagnosed, if you don't mind telling us about what that was like and maybe some of the signs where you could tell something wasn't quite right.
Yeah. It was a really long journey, as I think, I don't know your story either, but maybe it's the same, that you had a long journey advocating for yourself before you finally got the diagnosis, because we're young and the doctors don't expect that it's going to be cancer. So they just kind of, for me, my tumor was in my sinus, my maxillary sinus. And so it blocked my right nostril. And so that was like the first sign of it, that anything was wrong, was I couldn't breathe out of my right nostril. And then funky stuff started coming out of my nose. And I started to have kind of like a droop kind of thing because the tumor was like pushing against my eye. So there were those kind of things, but they were all subtle enough, and it wasn't really causing pain, too much pain, you know, nothing that was unbearable. So I spent 6 months going to different doctors and trying to advocate for myself and my health and push for answers that I didn't get for a really long time. And finally I reached out to, it was a sandwich there.
Yeah.
Nice.
About it. Yeah.
Solid.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm jealous. I love sandwiches.
Yeah. We got this
Hell
coffee
yeah.
place right by the beach. It's called The Cup. I'll have to give you a little preview, but it's called the Cheesy Toast.
Oh,
And
hell
bacon,
yeah.
tomato, and cheese. So they put this like really good seasoning on it. It's killer. So
That's the combo.
yeah, right by the water. So we usually get some coffee, sandwich, hang out by the beach. So yeah, that's why we were a little delayed. Again, appreciate that. Your patience. If you're ever out here in California too, we'll take a stroll to The Cup. It's a good spot.
Yeah. That sounds like a dream. That sounds like an honest to God dream.
Cool. Well, I'm sorry for disrupting you. The side combo on sandwiches, but
sandwiches are worth it, man. But
for sure.
Yeah. So it was hard in a different country. Basically, it's hard in general, I think, but in another country, it was really hard to try to like even know where to look for answers. And so I finally made a Facebook post after going to one doctor who refused to even look up my nose. Like usually they were like kind of peering up there to see what they could see. But this one was like, no, I'm not going to look up your nose, and I'm not going to refer you to any. It was like a public doctor. And so she wasn't going to refer me to any like specialist until I picked up the antibiotics that she prescribed from the pharmacy and took them. I never took them. She didn't know, but like that's what she said. And I had already taken a bunch of antibiotics, steroids, nothing really did anything. So I left that appointment crying, and I made a Facebook post. I actually like went and sat in the lobby of that doctor's appointment, and right there, then and there, made a Facebook post asking my Finnish friends if they have any suggestions of what I should do, where I should go. And there happened to be an ENT who my musician friends knew really well, because he also did some stuff with like, I'm a brass player. And so he did some stuff with like embouchure, which is like the muscles in your face that help you play a brass instrument. And so he also was like, he did some therapy with that. So a lot of my brass player friends knew him and knew that he was an ENT. So they suggested that I go to meet him. And I did. And he looked at my nose, a really long thing that freaked me out. And then he saw something, but he was very optimistic that it wasn't cancer. So he didn't say anything to me that day. And he sent me along for a couple scans and sent me along to this surgeon. And I met the surgeon on Friday the 13th of April. And he shook my hand, said, "I'm Oro." And I said, "I'm Danna." And then he basically said, "You have a tumor." And I was like, what? I was alone at this appointment. I had no idea that news was coming. And I said, "So does that mean I have cancer?" And he said, "We think so," because I had already had metastases to my neck. So they were quite sure that the tumor was not benign because there were lumps in my neck. And so that's my time leading up to the diagnosis. And that was obviously like really crazy and surreal to be in Finland and get the diagnosis by myself and go through all of those like first days and weeks of life with cancer by myself. My mom eventually came to Finland after about a month. She got to Finland and she ended up, it was only planned that she was going to stay for like 6 weeks, but she went home and went back to the US after those 6 weeks. And I was really, really struggling. So she came back and stayed for the whole year. And so I had her to help me navigate my first year of treatment, which was a blessing and a curse because obviously like needed her for a lot of things in a lot of moments. But I think it actually like drew me away from my friends because mom was always there and she was so easy to be around. And it was just hard to go see my friends and go do anything that felt like, more effort or less comfort than with mom. Mom was always there. So I think I didn't like rely on my friends very much until after mom left. And then I was out of treatment for a while and I was very, very lonely without her for a little while. So then I started to rely on my friends more. And I have great friends in Finland and here. But, my whole young adulthood was in Finland. So some of my best friends, I actually just got off the phone with one of them like an hour ago. And they're so great and they're so willing to do anything they can for me, even from across an ocean.
That's fantastic. One of my questions I have, just hearing a little bit about the start of your journey, is what made you decide to stay in Finland? And I ask that because obviously it's a unique situation being there in itself. Pretty cool, kind of younger, going abroad, all that. That's really rad. And then you throw in something like a serious diagnosis with cancer, and yeah, that's very, very unique. What made you decide to stay there for the first part of treatments versus coming back to the States?
Flack, I just really wanted to be in Finland still. And at the beginning, I don't know if you have a similar experience, but I was very like toxically optimistic at the beginning of this. I was sure that I was sure I was going to heal myself with positivity. Um, and so I planned on getting through treatment and continuing my life as normal. I also had no idea that it would be no normal to go back to, after treatment. So I I just stayed there kind of not knowing um, that things were going to go the way they were going to go. And also I I think they kind of planned on starting treatment really quickly after my diagnosis. So they already had a plan when I got my diagnosis. They were like, you're going to come here on this day and do this and stuff. So it was like, they didn't really even ask if I wanted to go home. So I just kind of, I didn't, so it's fine. But that's just kind of how it happened, I guess. Oh, I can't hear you.
My bad. Classic. So I have this gamer headset, and it's got like this
Oh my
extra mic
gosh.
where if you flip it up, but then there's a mute on the computer. Anyways, age of technology. When I was teaching online, I would do that with my students, and sometimes they'd let me go for like a few minutes at a time, and then the aides would finally step in.
No,
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
that's
Um,
cruel.
yeah, it was always pretty funny. But so I was going to share that we have, I guess, similar. There's some, I guess, similarities in our situations in that I had been living in California for about 3 years when I had been diagnosed, and I don't. I had a good group of friends by that point, but no family out here.
Wow.
And one of the questions was like, well, how come you don't go home? A lot of people would ask. And for me, I'm
Where's
so fortunate.
home?
Yeah, Chicago area. I grew up in a suburb called Naperville, about
Cool.
40 minutes from, yeah, 40 minutes from Chicago.
Cool. Love
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah, it's fun. Played, I play hockey too, and we did spend a little time in Minnesota just throughout the years, travel
Cool.
hockey and stuff. And then we also did a cool pond hockey tournament up in like St. Paul area. It's a Labatt outdoor pond hockey. It's a big 3-on-3 tournament, but that was always fun too.
Awesome. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. So you were in
Oh no, you're
California, no
good.
family.
Yeah, yeah, no family and great group of friends. They really helped helped pick up the slack to make things a lot easier when you're going through those the parts with cancer. But also my family, they would come out when needed, treatment weekends, or if I had any major surgeries, my mom or dad would come in and work together to where, someone was out here for 4 or 5 weeks at a time if needed. So very
Sure.
fortunate in that sense. And then I was also going to share that this is technically my second time with cancer. When I was a child, I was diagnosed at age 4, and we were actually living in London at the time.
Wow.
And yeah, so again, kind of similarities with the foreign experience, the
Yeah.
healthcare, universal healthcare type thing over in England.
Right, because
And I
there's
received,
NHS, right?
correct, yes.
Yeah.
And I received all of my care over there. In fact, we had come back to Chicago at one point for another opinion, but they kind of put us back on a flight because the care was radically different in that it was going to be, I think, more helpful in a sense. Anyways, so I just think it's interesting hearing those similarities. And one of the questions I had with that is, can you tell us about what it was like navigating a foreign healthcare system versus what it's like here in the United States?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of an odd one out as far as that goes because in my from what I understand, well, what I know, cancer treatment is expensive as hell in the US. And if you don't have, I mean, even if you do have insurance, it still can be just like outrageously expensive. And there's like the deductible thing that you need to meet and all of that. And that all of it's kind of like new to me because as I've
Oh,
mentioned, wait,
yeah, I
what?
gotta interrupt you. I was gonna say that stuff is so foreign to me, and I'm not motivated by it at all. Just don't care about it. Like, I teach special ed. Like, yeah. So basically, I was going to say trying to navigate this stuff was a real challenge for me, and so you don't need to give us like the total details and go into all the info, but yeah, just keep telling us a little bit. So we got things like deductible, and it is very expensive. Versus like
Yeah.
what? How about in Finland? Would you see a lot of bills? Would you have to pay out of pocket for a lot of stuff?
Um, at the beginning, I didn't. So there's this thing called Kela, which is kind of like the equivalent of government money here. And where you get if you're sick, it's called sairauspäiväraha. And and if you're sick, you get paid I don't even remember anymore, but a certain amount every month. Um, specifically to pay your medical bills but they weren't much. I mean, sometimes I would have one that came for a couple hundred, but very rarely that happened. Medications were €3 each, and then after I hit a certain point they were free um, for a year, like in the year's time. And yeah, so at the very beginning I didn't have this Kayla card. And so I was having to pay, that's like kind of the equivalent of like insurance, I guess, or government money. I don't know. Anyways, it's weird. I didn't have the Kayla card, so I had to, Neulasta, like the shot you give yourself after treatment
Right.
to or Fulfilla or whatever. There's a bunch of different ones, but in Finland I was getting Neulasta. and I had to pay like $1,000 for that out of pocket a couple of times, but then they gave me that money back once I got on the program. So it was like really nice. But I have to say, what I wanted to say is that my experience in the US actually has been really, really good, because as soon as I got here, I was able to start getting MA, medical assistance. In Minnesota covers everything except like I'll probably pay $60 a month for medications and all of that stuff combined. I probably pay that much. So, and then shortly after I was able to get on SSI as well, government money for disability, because I have stage 4 cancer. And so they said, if you have a disease resulting in death, you can get this. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. Like $800 a month, sure. So that's kind of my experience. That was kind of babbling, but that's
No,
kind of
you're
my
good.
with
I realized.
it's kind of been similar.
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that it's been a good experience. It sounds like in both spots for you.
Yeah, which is weird. I realize it's not like that for everyone. So I feel
Yeah,
very
and
privileged.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like I've been in the same boat in that I have had a good experience, certainly in terms of care and help and support, and with the healthcare stuff. It just seems like, although I will say it is extremely expensive. Like, it, not only am I technically dying from this disease, but I'm slowly going broke in the process, right? Like, it's so much money.
That's
Um,
insane.
yeah, and like you just think, again, I'm so bad at understanding and navigating the healthcare piece, but
Yeah, me
from
too.
what I understand, like, we can do better. We should be able to do better. So, I mean, we're, the US, United States of America, like, we got to do better at some of these pieces. I think that's
Yeah.
probably for another episode someday. But so tell us a little bit about what that transition was like for you coming from Finland back to America. Was that, just an emotional journey as well? How was it to, especially as you're undergoing some like cancer treatments?
Well, I think like, how when you're in treatment, you're kind of in survival mode. So you don't like, I don't know, I was really focused on that, and I barely mourned or grieved leaving Finland and leaving my friends, because I honestly was just like so low on energy. And so I was so drained and my brain fog was so bad. And I kind of was glad to have a bit of an escape from all the goodbyes. Like, saying goodbyes, it takes so much energy, and you're supposed to cry and stuff, but I just wasn't really feeling it. So it took a lot of energy, and I was happy to have a new start, basically. Um, yeah, when I got here, it was a little bit difficult because my uncle died like the day after I got home, and my grandma died like 3 days after I got home. And that was, again, I didn't cry when my grandma died, which we were pretty close. I mean, considering I lived in Finland, we were pretty close. Um, and I didn't cry. And that was really, I didn't understand that. That was really strange. I still haven't really processed why that happened. But what was really, really hard for me was that my mom, my rock, just went into a really dark place. And it was her mom that died. And she had been so strong for me, and she was so tired. She worked so hard to help get me packed up when we came home from Finland. And then she came home and right away had these 2 deaths in our family. And especially her mom was so hard for her. and she felt guilty. She felt like maybe if she had been here and been able to advocate for my grandma and get her better care in the hospital, and had gotten her to the hospital sooner and stuff, maybe she would still be alive. So my mom just took on a lot. And I don't know about you, but when my parents are upset, when they're mad, when they're sad, whatever, it really takes a toll on me. So yeah, that was the hardest part.
Yeah, that's extremely difficult, and I agree, especially as you describe your mom as your rock. It seems like, yeah, when they're hurting, it hurts you more, maybe more so than than anything, right? Because you
Yeah.
kind of think those people are like invincible in a way, and to see them that vulnerable and in that much pain, it's very, very difficult. I was actually just saying to a woman we talked with yesterday for the podcast that I always find myself worrying about my mom, and then I have to remind myself that she's the toughest customer I've ever met. And
Oh,
like, man, I don't know why I'm worrying about her. She's gonna be okay.
yeah. You're
She's
talking about like worried about her when you die.
yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, when I die. And like, actually my grandfather just passed away recently as well, about a month ago. And that was my mom's dad, and they lived
Wow.
together. And I know that's been weighing heavy on her heart as well. So that's been real tough, but good stuff coming up. She's about to retire from her job as a teacher, and then at the end of this month she's going to come out here to California, and I found a spot for her real close to the harbor by the beach, so she's going to stay with
Oh,
us for a couple months, so it'll be nice.
cool. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, I
Yeah.
hear you in that sense. It can be hard with the folks to see them struggling.
Yeah. And I mean, likewise, it's hard for them to watch us. And that's something I never understood at the beginning. I thought, I'm the one going through this cancer thing. So I'm the one who really is struggling here. But sometimes I feel like it's almost harder to watch your loved one going through something tough and being sad and depressed and just not finding any joy in anything. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah, it's really, really, really tough.
yeah, it is. Yeah, that's a really hard part. It sounds odd, but I almost like I am thankful in the sense that I'm the one who's sick versus like one of my sisters or my mom or dad or someone, because just what you said, it'd be so hard to see that. And I just feel like this is supposed to be, it's supposed to be me for some whatever reason.
I
And I
get
was,
that. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
yeah,
you're good. Yeah. Do you feel that way as well? I mean, what do you
I
like? How do
do.
you grapple with your diagnosis?
Um,
Especially you mentioned early on being very optimistic, and same thing, like when I got diagnosed it was considered a stage 3, but I'm like, stage 3, that's nothing. Like, hey, I had stage 4 when I was 4 years old, right? Like a year of treatment, surgery, knock it out, done deal, right? And obviously it didn't play out that way. So just tell me a little bit about, I guess, what that was like for you as you kind of learned about how severe this was, your diagnosis.
well, so yeah, I had this period at the beginning, probably the first like 4 or 5 months where I felt really, really optimistic about everything. And I told my doctors, I don't want to hear any percentages about, how many people die from rhabdo and blah. I have rhabdomyosarcoma, by the way. I haven't said that yet. But yeah, I was so optimistic. And then what happened was pretty early on, they saw a spot in my lung um, on the CT scan, and they were like, well, we're not gonna know really what this is, if it's cancer or like residual infection or what it is, um, for 6 weeks, I think it was that they said. we're going to have to wait to take scans again and see if it's grown or disappeared or what it is. So, so during that time was the first time I felt in my life insanely depressed and just so low. I was suicidal. I told my mom I want to jump under the train. We would take a train to Helsinki every day, the center. And I told her I want to jump under the train, or I want to just go fly home to Minnesota and quit all treatment and just die. And I felt just like life was so pointless. If I was just going to die anyways, and I was never going to heal from this disease. At that time, I didn't see myself living alongside cancer. I saw, myself healing from cancer. And if that wasn't going to happen, there was no point. So I struggled with that for those 6 weeks. And then I had scans. I got on antidepressants, I should say that too. And those really helped me too. After about 2 weeks, it just kicked in that, okay, nothing's different, but you can handle these things. It's lighter, it's not different, but it's lighter and you can carry more. So that's kind of how I felt after I took the antidepressants. But for the first time, that's how I accepted death, I guess. And I say that now, accepting death was so different then than it is now, because I hadn't had any real trauma, like medical. I'd been through chemo, but it was pretty easy physically on me. My first treatment that I went through was, it made me tired, but it never made me like really sick or lose a bunch of weight or anything like that. So I had it pretty easy going, and I had never experienced like moments where I actually felt like I was going to die like I have now. And so I don't know if I have really accepted death then, but that's when I started to accept that maybe this cancer is never going away and I have to learn to live alongside it. And I forget what the initial question was now. I kind of went off on a tangent.
No, that was perfect. It was, I feel like you answered it beautifully. It was basically just how did you learn to grapple with your diagnosis and the idea that this might not be a curable disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable with your story and sharing that, because it's scary and it's hard to even say those things. Because you're thinking and it's like, man, if I share this with people, like, what are they going to think? And I feel like a lot of that resonates with me quite a bit. So
wow.
It's just heavy, when you get to that point where that there's really not a whole lot you can do with the disease in terms of like treatments and how to approach it. And so I guess it sounds like so you mentioned that you had that scan, there was a waiting period, and then did they do another scan and see that spot your lung had grown? I guess how exactly did a doctor kind of explain like, hey, there's, this is going to be something we can't cure, if that's how I understand it as well, if that makes sense.
Actually, that time it disappeared. So that was like 5 months into my journey with cancer. And I didn't
So a total mind fuck, I'm sure, in a sense.
Yep. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Total mind fuck.
Because you're probably thinking like, okay, good. Like things are, it's gone. Things look good, right?
Yes. And they, they were fine for a long time. It wasn't really until, so that was in 2018, like probably October 2018. It wasn't until September 2020 that I actually had lung metastases and became stage 4 and terminal. And actually, when that happened, my doctor came in and he said, he greeted me with, "Oh shit." So he's the doctor I had for all my treatment the first time around. And I say the first time around, but it never really went away all the way. It just kind of was stable for a while. And yeah, he greeted me with, "Oh shit." And that's when he said, "You might only have 3 months to live." And that was September 2020. Now we're a year and a half after that. So I'm doing pretty well, I would say. I had stable scans yesterday. I still got this pesky tumor on my pleura, the lining of my lung and my chest wall. So that's big and it causes pain. But it's for now not going to kill me, but it will, So I don't know. I think when things are really bad with my health in January, I was really, really sick. I was in the hospital for 18 days and I was having trouble breathing. I was hallucinating. Things looked super, super bad. And they were like not 100% sure that I was going to make it out of there. So when those kinds of times are happening, I feel like I'm stuck in survival mode. I don't know if you feel a similar way, like in your worst moments, that you're not even like focused on being scared about death because you're just so focused on like surviving in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Well, we're glad that you're feeling better and doing good for the most part now, or at least got past that rough patch. It sounds like, and it seems like maybe you're a little bit better. Can you tell us about just what some of those symptoms are like, and just the everyday, I guess, grind? And even for as this is a podcast, we can't see you per se, or the listeners can't. I noticed that you've got like some sort of breathing tube or something in your nose. It looks like. Can you just tell us a little bit about what some of those instruments are like and how they help you?
Yeah, I have a lot of mobility aids and just aids in general. First of all, this is a wig. This is not my real hair. I wish my real hair was this fabulous. Great. Thank you. I love it. Literally $23 on Amazon.
Nice. Yeah,
Thank
it looks
you.
lovely. Of course.
Thank you. So I use that, which I consider an aid, I guess, because it helps me feel normal and helps me with my dignity. So I consider it an aid. And then I have I use an oxygen tank. So I have a nasal cannula on all the time. Right now I've tried to go without it and that didn't go so hot for me. So I just keep it on all the time, which is very limiting because oxygen tanks run out of air. And so you can't be out for too long. You always got to be watching how much air you have left in the tank. Because if you're running out, you got to get home. So that's a little bit limiting, but I'm finding ways to live around it. And ultimately, like, I don't need to be out for that long. Usually the only thing that's hard is like, I can never spend the night anywhere because my tank only lasts, like, together I have two and they last about 5 or 6 hours. So I could never go sleep over anywhere, which is difficult, like, for dating because I live with my parents. So it's just my parents are really cool with me going anywhere, but like I can't. So that's interesting. That's for another podcast, right? Dating with cancer. Oh my God.
Yeah, that can be, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I hear you. That's a whole
if you want to have me back for a dating with cancer, I would
that'd be a good one.
That would be a good one. Yeah. But I also use wheelchair when I have to walk any sort of distance. I use a wheelchair and I have right here. Well, okay, I don't know how to turn the video, but anyways, I have a commode in my room in case I can't make it to the bathroom in time. And I also have a shower chair. So those are kind of all my mobility aids and just aids in general. And I'm grateful for them because, like I said, they help preserve dignity and independence.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How have your folks responded with all this, and your parents, just how have they helped navigate, or I guess how are they doing?
They do. This is what I tell everyone who asks. They do about as well as I'm doing. So they have good days if I have good days, and they have bad days if I have bad days. So although they do try to, be strong for me, and it's rare that, we all break down. It's very rare that happens. It happened the other day. That might have actually been the first time ever that we had a fight, and then and that just doesn't happen. We're really close. We're not angry people. We're really close. So it doesn't
Sometimes
happen.
it's needed. Sometimes you just got to feel it out and just, feel those emotions and let everything out kind of.
With anyone, and it's not just parents, it's roommates, it's partners, it's anything like that. Yeah. They're okay. We handle everything all right, I would say. We do a good job as a family. And tonight, me and my mom are going to a concert. We're going to the Dua Lipa concert.
Oh, cool.
It's gonna be so much fun.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Like ultimate pop star dreams. It's gonna be fun.
Good. I hope it's a great time. We read an article about, so I teach special ed, and every week we have a news article, and our students and I read about it. And I think she was up for some, like, maybe it was album of the year or something like that. But she was, I remember we read all about her and a couple other pop stars, and the kids were like really stoked about it. So that's going to be awesome. I hope it's a great time. Yeah.
How have you managed to continue working, like, with treatment? So, are you on treatment right now?
I am, and I'm actually not working currently. I started a new treatment in January of this year, 2022. And back in like December, I had kind of fallen ill, ended up in the hospital, one of those stints. For whatever reason, the last 3 years, without fail, November, December, I'm in the hospital. I don't know why. It's like happens like that. So I took some time off in December, and then when we started the new treatments, I took more time just to kind of see how the body would respond. And so far, I've been doing really well. My oncologist is pretty stoked, so that's great. And I'm hoping maybe after spring break to go back. I will say the district, my team, they work so hard for me. For example, this school year, I had first and second period as my prep and consult period. We get 2 periods off contractually, and my principals worked with me to where I could have those times off. That way I didn't have to start teaching till like 10:30-ish. And I have a home health nurse that I see every morning. So he would come, first thing in the morning around 8 or 8:30. We kind of get started with the day, fix me up, get me ready, and then it's off to work. But I always really enjoy working and teaching and being with the kids and the staff. Tremendous people. They've helped me so much throughout this experience. And
wow.
Yeah, I figure if I can keep it up, then I'll keep trying. And when I need time off, I'm lucky to have that support and people, grant that time. So.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool that you have I know that's like a huge problem among cancer patients, is like having understanding workplaces.
Yes.
So that's such a gift.
Oh, it is. And these people, my team and the district, and like people have donated time off, PTO, to where, for example, when I was first diagnosed, I needed to take like 3 or 4 months off towards the end of the year after a major surgery, and a bunch of people around the district donated PTO, and I was able to cover the whole, that whole time without needing to like lose salary or lose my job and all that stuff. So I've been very lucky. And
Wow.
it's like having cancer like this. I mean, it's a full-time job in itself, right? I mean, I'm
Yes,
not sure if that's how it feels for you, but between
definitely.
treatments, going to treatments, doctors, fighting with insurance, side effects that lay
Recovering.
you up,
Yeah.
yeah, all that stuff. I mean, it's a job, and it's hard.
It's hard
It's
even
not
to like
easy.
make time for friends and make plans and commitments because
Yes,
you never know how chemo's going to affect you that this week
totally.
or it's tough.
Totally.
Yeah.
I kind of joke that I don't make long-term plans because exactly that. You just don't really know what it's gonna be from day to day.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, yeah, it can be tricky. How has it impacted your social life having this disease? It sounds like you had a great group in Finland. But I give you credit. You still also sounds like you keep in touch with those people, so that's fantastic.
Yeah. We do a pretty good job, especially with my closest friends, of staying in touch. And much better job than I did when I was in Finland, staying in touch with my friends here. But they still rock. Like they're still here for me, and everything's cool. So life gets in the way of video calls. Now I have time for a lot of video calls because they're easy to cancel. Um, and it's just it's a pretty like low, what's the word I'm looking for? It's an easy commitment to make, so it's easy to stay in touch with them. But I'm lucky in the sense that my friends really just gathered around me and supported me, and asked what they could do, asked if they could come help me carry my groceries. Like typical, they assume you have cancer, so you're going to be too weak to carry your groceries, like things that are not necessarily true. but but they, yeah, they just would do anything that I needed. So I know a lot of people struggle with like losing friends and friends like dropping off the face of the earth when they get cancer, just because they don't know what to say, or they just don't know what to do. But I only had like a couple shitty hookup guys drop off the face of the planet for me, and my life is probably better without them anyways. So my friends have been great. Social life is
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's great to hear. Do you miss any aspects of, like, I mean, I'm sure you do. Maybe it's not a good question, but just like going out. One of the things we talked about briefly the other day was like things that cancer patients lose or you have to give up in order
Oh my
to
God.
continue being alive and balancing this disease. Is there
Yeah,
anything like really specific that comes to mind?
that is a spot on question. I'm dealing with that so much right now. I recently, this weekend, I've been dating a guy for like a year, but our relationship has kind of just like ever since I started, ever since the beginning of 2022, when I spent all the time in the hospital and kind of physically changed a lot, as far as like I can't drive anymore. Maybe TMI, but I can't really have a physical relationship with anyone. I probably can't even hold my breath long enough to kiss a guy. I I I've been dating a guy for like a year, and we officially on Friday talked about how, okay, we're just friends. We can meet other people if we want to. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. It's been happening gradually, so it's not like it happened all at once. but dating is a huge thing I feel like I miss out on and struggle with, because I am honest all the time. How can I not be? I use a wheelchair. I can't drive. I can't drink, and because of my painkillers, and I have a nasal cannula. Like I have to be honest from the start about my situation. So it scares a lot of people away. And so yeah, I feel like I miss out on that a lot.
Yeah, that's certainly a tough. Yeah, that's definitely a tough element to all of this.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, similar boat with the dating thing. The body just not what it used to be, right? Doesn't
Yes.
really function as well. Even if it does, like, it's just some of that stuff's not really as enjoyable, right? Some of the physical stuff.
I was a
'Cause
marathon runner before I got sick, so don't
wow,
even
yeah,
walk anymore.
right, yeah. So like elements like that with dating. And then for me, like, yeah, like hockey, I don't play hockey nearly. I might skate like once a year, if that, just
Wow.
for like a special occasion. So stuff like that. Going out, similar. Not that I don't go out anymore, but just it's harder, right? Like you're
You
just
can't really
tired.
get drunk.
Yeah,
It doesn't
exactly. And
feel good.
yeah, right. And then if you do, it's like, man, I don't know about you, but my hangovers are going to be like days long, right?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe that's with the age too. But yeah, so yeah, you give up a lot to try to stay alive, but it's
Yeah.
worth it too. It is worth it, obviously, right? I really try to just revel in little things and enjoy those little moments. Even today, walking to the beach with my two roommates, it was like, man, we were looking at the water and just felt great to be there. We live in California and it's a beautiful
Yeah.
day. Like there's so much happening in the world right now, and this is what
Mhm.
we're doing, which is awesome.
I
So
agree. I find it really helpful to like focus on just little joys. And for a long time, I'm sure you struggled with this too. Like we just talked about, we're not the same people that we were physically, emotionally, mentally, before cancer. And so for the longest time, I struggled with like comparing myself to pre-cancer Danna and wishing that I was her. But now I'm kind of in a place where I can find joy in simple, tiny things. And it's actually better. It's better that way. It doesn't, it's great. My days are great. I'm really happy
yeah,
generally.
yeah. I try to explain to people that it is very, very odd. I'll be the first to admit it, but I don't think I've ever been happier since finding like a certain balance with this disease,
Yeah.
despite the circumstances, right? So it's quite the paradox. And
Yes.
it is sad to me to know that it kind of took this for me to get there. But at the same time, like I would I have gotten there without this disease? I like to think so. Hopefully, yeah. It's not like I was miserable before this or anything, but
No, me neither.
it's just different, right? Like truly, you really truly try to embrace the little things and just appreciate and smile and be happy in each moment. And that's where
Yeah.
the paradox is, right? Because I haven't been happier, but at the same time, I'm dying from this horrible disease.
Yeah.
Um, but with that too, like what an opportunity that with these difficult circumstances, there's still a chance to enjoy life and see a lot of beauty in the world. So
Yeah. It's really cool, but it's also heartbreaking because it's like, wow, I finally found this. And like you said, I was never sad. I mean, I was sad sometimes, but like I was generally a pretty happy person before I got sick too. But now it's just different, and that makes dying like all the worse. But we know it's coming, and we we accept it. We try to accept it, I guess. I want to quickly ask, I know we're kind of running over here, but um are you planning to utilize medical aid in dying?
Yeah. So, and I'm glad you brought it up too, because I wanted to get there as well. And in terms of like time wise, I've got nothing going today, so we're really flexible.
Sweet ass.
We don't want to take up, too much of your time either. But yeah. So basically, and I'm glad, good segue. The topic of this podcast is obviously medical aid in dying. So we wanted to hear a little bit about your journey with that as well. For myself, I'll just kind of give a quick, I guess, background story. I hadn't really ever heard of it. I anticipate, now that I look back, I recognize, like, yes, it makes sense that California offers this, and I knew that other places in the world had done so as well. But a few years ago, it was December 2020, had fallen really ill, was in the hospital. My oncologist and I had a lot of, he came in one evening, we had a discussion. I explained to him that I was really afraid that even when I was mentally and emotionally ready to die, that I just physically won't go and I'll be stuck in agony and suffering from the disease. And that's when he explained that medical aid in dying is an option for people in California. And we went through the whole process and we did complete all the paperwork and the, legal necessities for me to have that access. So I do have access to it. I will plan to use it if necessary. I have certain, I guess, guidelines in my own head as to what that would look like. And it just comes back to, immense pain, just suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's kind of a brief piece on, I guess, where I stand with it. But tell us about yourself and how you learned about it and just where you're at with everything, because it might be different in Minnesota. So maybe you could share with our listeners what that's all about.
Yeah, so it is different in Minnesota. It's not legal here. And I feel the same way as you do about it, that I'm not sure I would utilize it, but if it came down to it and my pain and suffering were severe enough, I would definitely like to, at least, even if I wouldn't utilize it, like to just have it there. That's just what I desperately want, is to have it as an option, as a choice, so that I because even in January when I was in the hospital, I remember being like short of breath and just not being able to catch my breath. And that was only for maybe 10 minutes. If I had to just survive like that for hours, days, weeks, who knows how long, it just would be so unimaginably unpleasant that I just can't imagine dealing, like I said, unimaginably unpleasant. I can't imagine dealing with that for any large amount of time. So it would be so cool to have medical aid in dying as a choice. So I'm working with Compassion and Choices right now to advocate for it. I'm mostly working as a storyteller, but I'm also kind of on action teams, doing political stuff when I can, but I totally don't understand any of that. So it's been a learning curve, one that I'm willing to jump on, but it's been a journey with them, and I don't know honestly if I'll see the Medical Aid in Dying Act pass in my lifetime, which is really unfortunate because I would really like that. So anyways, I do want to share that I wasn't always comfortable with the thought of utilizing MAID. And you asked how I was introduced to it. So the first time I ever heard of, I mean, I knew about like assisted suicide, so to say, and all of those things. But the first time I ever like thought about it, and maybe thought about it in terms of like me possibly using it as a sick person, was I watched the movie Paddleton. Have you seen Paddleton?
No, is that the one with the bear?
No, it's
Oh,
no.
okay. I imagine a talking bear. That must be
Oh my
something
God.
different, obviously. But all right, tell me more. So Paddleton, you said?
Paddleton. It's a really weird name, but
Okay.
Paddleton, Paddleton is the name of this game that Ray Romano and Mark Duplass play. It's basically just those two. I think it's a low budget film, and they play this game with a ball on a paddle, and they call it Paddleton.
Nice.
And yeah, so the first time I ever heard of MAID really or thought about it was when I watched that movie, because Mark Duplass's character gets really sick, has terminal cancer, and he lives in a jurisdiction where MAID is legal, and so he gets the prescription, and he ends up taking it, not to ruin the movie, spoil the movie for you, but he ends up taking it some months later with him and Ray Romano are like best friends. So he's wrapped up in a blanket and he says, I think I'm ready right now. And he has shown in previous scenes, shown some signs of suffering and pain. And so he took the drug, and he didn't take any anti-anxiety meds. So he was like having a bit of a panic attack while he was dying. And it was just when he realized that, like, oh, I drank this and I can't go back. And so it was just like a little bit of an uncomfortable introduction to it. It wasn't like Bob's Choice or How to Die in Oregon. I feel like the deaths are much more peaceful and pleasant and almost fun. Maybe that's the wrong word, but they're excited to be done suffering, and they're excited to be there with their loved ones and to be conscious and to consciously make this decision at the end. Is so I feel like that was kind of a not the best introduction to it, and I thought it was like the hardest cancer movie I've ever watched, because I just felt really uncomfortable with it at the beginning. But then I came back to the States, and a friend from high school was working with CNC, and he introduced me to everybody, and that's how I got involved. And it's become obviously so close to my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Heavy stuff. Have you considered, I guess, what your end of life experience might be like? Especially, you mentioned that you're not sure if this legislation will be available to you to access, for you to access in Minnesota.
Yeah, I have considered, I guess, do you mean like what it will look like in terms of like how I'm gonna die, or
Yeah, I
what do you
guess.
mean?
Yeah, pretty much. Basically exactly that, in a sense. For example, we hear stories about people who relocate to a different state so they can have access to medical aid in dying. Is that something you would ever consider doing?
I don't think so. Um, yeah, I don't think so. I've already had to resettle um permanently in Minnesota from where I was living before, as you know, as we've talked about a lot in this podcast. But so I don't think, and I also don't think my family would really be up for it. I mean, if I said I really wanted it, they'd probably do whatever I ask. But they're great, and they want to make me comfortable and happy. But I don't see that happening for me. What I do see happening is myself enrolling in hospice really early, so I can, I want to take advantage of hospice, and I want to be there basically 6 months before the end, as long as I can be there. And I want to be at home. And so obviously I want hospice nurses here. Maybe at the end I would like to utilize palliative sedation. But I don't really know. I think part of me a little bit wants to experience what it's like to die. You hear a lot from different people, a lot of that they see certain things or meet people again. And I think that's all hallucination, but I don't know. I don't think at that stage it would be so much suffering because you're on a lot of pain meds, you're hallucinating, you're kind of in a different zone. So I'm kind of interested in experiencing that at the end of my life, which is why I don't say I would necessarily utilize metaclate dying, but I've never experienced dying, so I don't know if it's going to be too hard, then I would want to utilize MAID. But I might not have that option. So it's, yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah, that's again, it comes back to at least just granting people the option. Wouldn't that be nice, right? We could just have that option. And then I've heard similar things in relation to the dying process. From my understanding, it can be like, it seems like your brain floods your body with some of those good chemicals to kind of make things easier, from my understanding. In fact, I was telling Hasban recently that I had read a news article about a man who was having a MRI done. He had epilepsy, and he was an older gentleman in his 80s. He actually had a heart attack during the MRI, and he had a DNR. So they didn't resuscitate, and they actually were able to record the final like 10 to 15 minutes of him dying on the machine. And they did see that, after his heart stopped and the human body kind of stopped functioning, there was still some brain activity. And they wonder, we hear about kind of the life flashing before the eyes type thing. And the doctors, I guess, make that educated guess or hypothesize that, it's our body and our brain flooding our mind with some of those hopefully good memories and sending us off in a good direction on the way out. But who knows? Wild stuff.
Exactly. Who knows? And that's why it's really tough, and why I would just like to have the choice. So it's like, when the time comes, I've got like my options laid in front of me, and because I do not know, like we just said, who knows? So it would just be nice to have several options.
Yeah. And one of the questions that we ask, I feel like most of our guests, is what is their perspective on how we deal with death in this country? For example, do you think that most people are afraid to have this discussion about their own death or just death in general? And with that, why do you think that might be?
Well, I think it's because it's we don't have any information about what happens after you die. And some people with a strong enough faith feel like heaven is a better. I have one friend. I grew up in a Lutheran church, going to Lutheran church, and one of my best friends, I'm not religious anymore or spiritual or anything. I'm agnostic. But one of my good friends is still pretty religious, and her mom is super religious. And she said to me one time, I was talking to her on the phone, and she said, with all the chaos that's going on in the world, heaven's starting to look better and better every day. And it's like, wow, like having that kind of faith would help a lot. But I think still the unknowns of what happens, what the dying process is like and how you experience it, are all very unknown. And is it painful? And is it scary? And I'm not going to see my loved ones again, at least for a while, until they come to heaven too. all of those things. I think just the unknowns. Americans don't like unknowns. We spend a lot of money to have our futures, laid out as well as we possibly can. And we spend a lot of money to go to college to have clear, good futures. But that, death is one thing that's like totally out of our control. And so is everything else. But Americans feel like if they spend enough money, they can have more control, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely agree with some of that stuff too. And it feels like, I'm not sure, maybe if we don't talk about it, it won't happen type thing or something like that.
Maybe.
And
Yeah.
it's just odd because as we've been going through this podcast, I feel like my relationship with death has changed quite a bit.
Really?
And yeah, and even just going through this disease with cancer as well, I'm much more comfortable with the idea.
Yeah.
Not afraid. I'm not afraid to die anymore. And yeah, it's not as hard to talk about this stuff with my family as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to ask. How did they perceive the topic of medical aided dying? Did your family and friends, was there support there? Was anybody adverse to the idea? What was that discussion like?
At first my family wasn't super excited about it. They were kind of like, why are you into this? Like what is this? But just kind of like I was before I got into it, just a little bit like, like that's kind of scary. Why are you interested in that? So yeah, that's kind of how my family was. Friends, I've been kind of very open about how like don't say the wrong thing to me about my disease going through it. So I think they've just kind of watched and listened and learned that this is important to me. So don't bash it. And none, I don't think any of them had strong enough opinion about it to to either like or dislike it, agree or disagree with it, except I have one friend in med school, one of my very best friends, and we've had some interesting disagreements about it because he says it's like such an ethical issue for doctors, and that he thinks he will never bring it up with patients because he could get sued. And I was like, whoa, seriously? Like, one of your best friends is dying and this is important to me, and you're just like not going to at all work with me on making it a reality for terminally ill people in the future because you might get sued. Like, that just seems like so bizarre to me that compassion should be over everything and for doctors. And for him to say that was just like really bizarre and a little bit hurtful. But I think he's like starting to warm up to the idea of it, but I don't really know.
Yeah, we are working on having a doctor join us who shares a similar viewpoint in that he does not prescribe it to his patients or won't really bring it up. And a lot of it's based, it seems like, on the ethical components to it. But there's still a lot, I think, it's not exactly black and white. There's a lot of gray area with this subject. And yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. It's really complicated, and I think some people who say that that they wouldn't bring it up to their patients, some physicians who say that, I think they just might not be informed enough about like all the precautions that the act requires that you take in order to make sure that the patient is not being coerced or that it's what the patient wants. And so I think that it's just like we need to like teach people what it actually is, and all of the things that protect patients from utilizing it if they don't want to.
Yeah, I agree. There are definitely good safeguards in place, and certainly it's a touchy subject. I mean, we're talking about all what you could argue is the most intimate and sacred topic and discussion that we have as a species, right? I
Yeah.
mean, death, like the final moments and what happens. It's the ultimate question. You've been awesome. This has been I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Right
I
back
feel
at
like we could
you.
keep on talking, but I do try to keep it somewhat reasonable in terms of time for people. But we'll have to do another episode someday. I think that'd be fun. Maybe we'll do
I
the
love
dating
that.
episode as we mentioned.
I've got chemo next week, but after that, I'm free as a bird to talk. So,
Sweet.
so
Sweet.
let's
Well,
definitely do that, Flack. I've really enjoyed this.
yeah, we will. That would be great. And I also like to send it over to Hasban. He always comes up with some good questions or, talking points. Hasban, if you're still there, you got anything for Danna?
Yeah, for sure. I don't. I feel like it did. I just have one question, but it's more of a comment, like I guess, and it's something based on something you said like earlier. First of all, I really just enjoyed the convo, and thanks for opening up as you did. But the one thing that I kind of want to ask you about that I read about your background was that you were really into music. I believe that's why you moved to Finland in like the first place, and I'm sure that's something that you can't. That's not as part of your life as it was before. And I was just wondering if it was still part of your life in a different way. I know you played the trombone before, and I was just wondering, if music is still a part of your life in some way.
So I quit playing trombone in like the summer of 2019. I took a break from trombone when I first got diagnosed because I was thinking I wouldn't be able to handle it with chemo. But I only took like a 5-month break, and then I picked it back up again and actually prepared for my bachelor's recital. So I performed that. It was like a half an hour, 45-minute long recital, which was really cool. And my oncologist and a bunch of nurses actually came to watch it, which was like such a cool experience. And yeah, but then after that, I kind of put the horn away, and I never really picked it up again seriously. And it felt like, music is a really heavy career because your own worst critic, and you're really never good enough for yourself. So it just felt after cancer like it was too much to take on. And so I set the horn down, and my relationship with music now is really beautiful, like listening to music and really, really like focusing on it. That's definitely different, and it's better. But I don't really play trombone ever. I pick it up once every couple months, and it sounds like shit.
No, that's like really cool that you still tried and that you did that. I mean, I was reading about your background that you were like you played with an orchestra, but you did a solo within the orchestra. That's really cool. It just stuck out to me that like must have been a cool moment.
Oh my God,
sure.
yes, one of my life highlights.
For
Good
sure.
for you, friend.
Cool.
We were talking the other day. I was saying I have zero musical ability, and I think it's so cool. And I'm a little envious of people who have that talent.
Same.
So good on you. I mean, it's just so rad. And
thank you.
Yeah, the world is just a much better place when we got a little tunes to jam to.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we all need it in our life. It's like a form of a therapy. And then the only other like comment I had was the story of your mom was really cool to hear too. You know, like it's like we were talking about you, but we were also talking about her story within your story. And yeah, I just found it really fascinating that, she came out for 6 weeks, and then, she kind of had to go back, and then she just like, fuck it, I'm going to go live with my daughter. And she lived with you for a year. So the relationship you guys have is really cool and like beautiful. And moms are just awesome. We actually talked about this last podcast episode. We interviewed a mom, and
Wow.
yeah, we were just
Moms
talking about the podcast.
Slap.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's that's really cool. I just really enjoyed that part like of the story, and she sounds like a really cool person.
She is, and she's my best friend. I always said if I got married, she'd be my maid of honor. I don't think that's gonna happen, but she's
sweet.
My best friend.
Yeah, that is sweet.
Yeah.
Well, cool, friend. This was awesome. Thank you again for all of your time and just opening up and sharing your heart with us and being vulnerable too. Some of this stuff is really heavy and it can take a lot of courage. So we appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. It's always actually really healing for me to talk about what I've been through. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I had a blast.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we'll do it again definitely in the future.
Cool. Until then, have fun at the beach. Soak up some sun that we don't have here in Minnesota. Bye.
We will, friend. All right. Take care.
Bye. You too.
Bye.